The Awakening. The stasis chamber hissed as its seal broke for the first time in 3 millennia. Captain Elena Voss opened her eyes to the dim blue emergency lighting of the generation ship Pathfinder. Her vision took several moments to focus, the effects of extended hibernation still waning on her body. The chamber's internal diagnostics confirmed what the ship's eye had determined. It was time to wake up. "Status report," Elena croaked, her voice raspy from disuse. She accepted the hydration tube that extended automatically toward her lips. "All systems functional," responded HFY, the ship's artificial intelligence. "Crew revival protocols initiated. You are the first to awaken, Captain." Elena nodded, slowly regaining her bearings. The Pathfinder was one of 12 generation ships that had fled Earth during the final days, carrying the last remnants of humanity into the unknown reaches of space. Their mission: to find a new home and ensure humanity's survival after the Drazari Collective began their systematic destruction of Earth. "How many survived hibernation?" Elena asked, dreading the answer. 92% of occupants show stable life signs, higher than projected survival rate," Araya replied, her voice maintaining the same calm tone despite delivering what was, under the circumstances, excellent news. Elena allowed herself a small smile. 20,000 souls had been entrusted to the Pathfinder, and now over 18,000 remained. It was better than they had dared hope when they launched, fleeing from a burning world. "Begin revival sequence for command staff," Elena ordered as she stepped out of her chamber, her legs unsteady. "Priority Alpha." "Acknowledged. Revival sequence initiated." Elena made her way to the bridge, her muscles protesting after their long dormancy. The corridors of the Pathfinder were silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. This vessel, once Earth's greatest achievement, had carried them safely through the void for 3,000 years. By the time Elena reached the bridge, her executive officer, Commander Darius Chen, was already there, examining the ship's long-range sensor data. "Captain," he acknowledged, his voice carrying an unusual tension. "There's something you need to see." Elena joined him at the display, and what she saw made her blood run cold. The sensors showed a vast network of civilizations spanning the galaxy, thousands of worlds connected by advanced transportation routes and communication systems. "We're not alone out here," Darius said quietly. "No," Elena replied. "And from these energy signatures, they're far more advanced than anything humanity had achieved before we left." Araya's voice interrupted their contemplation. "All command staff revival complete. Medical reports minimal hibernation complications." Within the hour, the bridge was fully staffed. Dr. Sarah Nakamura, Chief Science Officer, was analyzing the data on the alien civilizations. Admiral Victor Okafor, military commander for the expedition, was already discussing defensive strategies with his lieutenants. Chief Engineer Raj Patul was overseeing the revival of his technical teams to begin ship diagnostics. "We need to establish where we are in relation to Earth," Elena announced to her assembled officers. "Araya, use the stellar cartography data to pinpoint our location." The holographic display in the center of the bridge flickered to life, showing their position relative to known star systems. The ship had traveled farther than anticipated, pushed by the solar winds and gravity wells they had used to accelerate their journey. "We are approximately 2,800 light-years from Earth's original position," Araya reported. "Local star patterns match our departure-era stellar maps with expected drift compensation." "Can you show us Earth?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The display shifted, zooming toward the Sol system. What they saw wasn't the blue jewel they had left behind, but a shattered world, fragments of Earth still orbiting the sun in an asteroid belt where their home had once been. "Dear God," Victor murmured. "They didn't just invade. They destroyed it completely." Elena's jaw tightened. "Araya, what about the other ships? The rest of the Exodus fleet?" "Scanning for quantum beacon signatures," Araya responded. After several minutes, Points of light began to appear on the display. I am detecting 11 signatures. All Exodus vessels appear to have survived. Send the reunion signal, Elena ordered. It's time to bring humanity back together. Over the next several days, as more of the crew awakened, the Pathfinder made contact with the other generation ships. Each had followed different trajectories to avoid detection, but all had programmed rendezvous coordinates for this distant point in space and time. 2 weeks after Elena's awakening, the captains of all 12 ships met virtually to discuss humanity's future. The faces that appeared on her screen were strangers to her, descendants of the original captains, as leadership had passed down through generations on ships where some crews had been kept awake in rotation. "The Drizeri didn't just defeat us," said Captain Amara Osei of the Nova Dawn. "They erased our world from existence. And they've prospered in our absence," added Captain Xiang Lu of the Celestial Dragon. "Our long-range scans show they're now one of the dominant powers in this quadrant." Elena studied the faces before her. 3,000 years had changed humanity in subtle ways. Some ships had developed distinct cultures during the brief periods when portions of their populations were awakened for ship maintenance and to prevent genetic stagnation. "We have 2 options," Elena said finally. "We can find an uninhabited world far from any civilization and quietly rebuild, or we can make those responsible pay for what they did to Earth." Silence fell over the communication channel. It was Captain Johansson of the Northern Light who spoke first, his accent thick with the linguistic drift that had occurred on his vessel. "Our ancestors didn't flee just to hide forever. They took the knowledge, culture, and spirit of humanity with them, so that one day we could reclaim our place among the stars." "Are you suggesting we go to war with a galactic power?" Captain Chiang asked. "Our scans show the Drizeri control hundreds of worlds now. We have 12 ships. 12 ships with 3,000 years of technological development," Elena pointed out. "While we slept, our AIs continued to run simulations, refine theories, and develop new technologies. We may have more advantages than you realize." Admiral Victor nodded in agreement. "The weapons systems on the Pathfinder alone are centuries beyond what Earth had when we departed, and we have something they won't expect: humanity itself. We should at least gather more intelligence before making a decision," Dr. Nakamura suggested. "Send stealth probes to Drizeri systems. Learn their weaknesses." Elena could see the hunger for justice in the eyes of her fellow captains. These were people raised on stories of a beautiful blue world that had been taken from them, who had grown up knowing they were exiles. "We'll need allies," Captain Rodriguez of the Esperanza noted. "The Drizeri must have enemies we can approach." "Let's put it to a vote," Elena suggested. "Do we hide and rebuild quietly, or do we make our presence known and seek justice for Earth?" The vote was unanimous. Humanity would not fade quietly into the darkness of space. They would reclaim their legacy and ensure that those who had destroyed Earth would pay for their crimes. "Then it's settled," Elena said, a grim determination in her voice. "We'll begin by dispatching stealth observers to key systems. We'll gather intelligence, assess potential allies, and prepare our forces." "And then?" asked Captain Osei. Elena's expression hardened. "And then we remind the galaxy why Earth was once feared and respected. We've had 3,000 years to prepare for this moment. The Drizeri thought they eliminated humanity from the universe, but they only scattered us to the stars. Now we return, not as refugees, but as Avengers." As the meeting concluded, Elena remained on the bridge, gazing at the holographic representation of what remained of Earth. The broken pieces of their homeworld drifted in an eternal orbit around the sun, a constant reminder of what had been lost. "HFY," she said quietly. "Begin full revival of military and scientific personnel. It's time to awaken humanity's wrath." "Understood, Captain," HFY responded. "Shall I also initiate Protocol Nemesis?" Elena paused. Protocol Nemesis was the contingency plan developed during the darkest hours before the Exodus, a comprehensive strategy for eventual counterattack should Earth fall. It had been created by Earth's greatest military minds, refined by 3 millennia of AI analysis, and waited only for human authorization to activate. Yes, Alina said firmly. Initiate Protocol Nemesis. The time for sleeping is over. Now we hunt. Throughout the Pathfinder, lights began to brighten as more systems came online. In the hibernation chambers, thousands of humans began to stir, awakening to a universe that had forgotten them. But soon, very soon, they would make themselves impossible to ignore. Humanity had returned, and this time, they would not be driven to extinction. This time, they, the survivors. 6 months after the awakening, the 12 ships of the Exodus fleet had transformed into a formidable armada. What had once been vessels of escape and preservation now bristled with weapons and defenses developed during their long journey through space. In the central command hub of the Pathfinder, Alina studied the tactical display, showing the positions of their stealth observers throughout Drazeri space. The data they had gathered painted a complex picture of the galaxy humanity had returned to. The Drazeri Collective has expanded significantly, Admiral Victor Okafor explained to the assembled leadership. They control approximately 1/8 of the known galaxy, with client states and buffer zones extending their influence even further. Their technological level? Asked Raj Patel, now overseeing the fleet's engineering corps. Advanced, but not as advanced as they should be, Dr. Nakamura answered, bringing up comparison charts. Given their resources and the time elapsed, they should have progressed further. Our analysis suggests they've become complacent, relying on stolen technology rather than innovation. Elena nodded thoughtfully. That matches with what we knew of them. The Drazeri were always better at taking than creating. The door to the command center slid open, and Lyra Kim, Director of Intelligence for the fleet, entered. A descendant of the original crew of the Silent Shadow, Lyra had been born in space and trained from childhood in espionage and information gathering. Our deep cover probes have successfully infiltrated 3 Drazeri core worlds, she reported. We've tapped into their historical archives. And, Alina prompted. Lyra's expression darkened. Earth wasn't their only victim. In the centuries following our departure, they systematically eliminated or subjugated at least 7 other advanced civilizations. Their empire is built on genocide. A heavy silence fell over the room. The knowledge that the Drazeri had continued their pattern of destruction only strengthened their resolve, but it also complicated matters. Humanity wasn't just seeking vengeance for Earth now. They were potentially fighting to prevent future atrocities. There's more, Lyra continued. They maintain a trophy world, a planet where they keep artifacts and records from civilizations they've destroyed, like a museum celebrating their conquests, including Earth artifacts. Elena asked sharply. Yes, according to their records, they have an entire wing dedicated to the human extinction, as they call it. The fury in the room was palpable. For 3 millennia, the Drazeri had displayed the remnants of their people like trophies, while humanity drifted through the void, carrying the dream of return. We need to hit that planet, Victor said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Not just for tactical reasons, but for what it represents. Elena raised her hand to temper his enthusiasm. We will, Admiral. But first, we need to understand our potential allies in this fight. She turned to the display, which now showed various alien civilizations identified by their stealth observers. Have we identified any who might side with us against the Drazeri? Lyra nodded. Several possibilities. The Novan Confederation has been engaged in a Cold War with the Drazeri for centuries. The Vex hegemony lost territory to them within the last 300 years. And the Solari Union barely survived a Drazeri cleansing campaign about 500 years ago. What about independent worlds? Darius asked. Smaller powers that might have grievances. There's a trade alliance called the Free Systems Coalition, Lyra replied. They maintain neutrality, but intelligence suggests they secretly supply resources to anyone opposing Drazeri expansion. Elena considered the information carefully. Humanity couldn't fight this war alone, no matter how advanced their technology had become during their long journey. We'll approach the Novans first, she decided. Their territory borders regions where we've detected anomalous energy readings. Dr. Nakamura, your team thinks these might be remnants of human colonies. Yes, Sarah confirmed. Before the fall, Earth had established outposts in several systems. The records were lost, but our AIs reconstructed likely locations based on historical data. If any survived the initial Drazeri purge, they may have developed independently all this time. The possibility that other humans might have survived, evolving separately for 3,000 years, added yet another dimension to their mission. Were they returning as the last of humanity, or would they find cousins among the stars? I want to send the Silent Shadow to investigate these anomalies, Alina said. Their stealth systems are the most advanced in our fleet. Agreed, Victor said. But we should also prepare our first strike. Something to announce our return to the galaxy. Elena nodded. The trophy world. We'll recover what was taken from Earth and send a message that humanity has returned. As the meeting concluded and the officers dispersed to their duties, Elena remained behind with Darius. Her executive officer had been unusually quiet during the discussion. Something's bothering you, she observed. Darius sighed. We're talking about starting a war, Elena. A war against an enemy that controls thousands of worlds. Even with allies, even with our advanced technology, the odds are astronomical. The odds were astronomical that we'd survive 3,000 years in space, Elena countered. Yet here we are. But is vengeance worth potentially sacrificing what remains of humanity? He asked. Our ancestors fled to preserve our species. Are we honoring their sacrifice by immediately throwing ourselves into conflict? It was a question Elena had wrestled with every night since the awakening. The weight of her decision, to commit humanity to war rather than quiet rebuilding, pressed on her constantly. I believe our ancestors didn't just flee to survive, she said finally. They fled to return stronger. Look at the resources they poured into Protocol Nemesis, the weapons they developed even as Earth burned. They didn't want us to just live, Darius. They wanted us to reclaim what was taken. He nodded slowly, not entirely convinced but understanding her position. Then let's make sure we do this right. No unnecessary risks. We can't afford to lose what little remains of humanity. Agreed, Elena said, which is why our first priority remains intelligence gathering and alliance building. We strike only when we're ready, and only at targets that matter. In the weeks that followed, the Exodus fleet maintained its position in the shadow of a dense nebula, invisible to standard detection systems. Their stealth observers continued gathering intelligence, while the ship's internal factories produced weapons and equipment for the coming conflict. The Silent Shadow departed on its mission to investigate the anomalous energy signatures, carrying a specialized team of scientists and military personnel. If human colonies had somehow survived the Drazeri onslaught 3 millennia ago, finding them could dramatically change the balance of power. Meanwhile, on the Pathfinder, Elena worked with Lyra to prepare first contact protocols for the Novan Confederation. Unlike humanity's disastrous first contact with the Drazeri, this approach would be careful, measured, and from a position of strength. We'll send a small delegation, Elena decided. A diplomatic ship with minimal weaponry, but escorted by 2 of our most advanced vessels at a discreet distance. The Novans are cautious by nature, Lyra noted. Their historical records show they rarely commit to alliances unless they see clear mutual benefit. Then we'll need to demonstrate our value, Elena replied. Do we have anything they want? Lyra smiled. Actually, yes. Our analysis of their communication traffic indicates they've been struggling with a technological barrier in quantum computing. It happens that's one area where our development during the journey exceeded pre-fall Earth standards by several orders of magnitude. Perfect, Elena said. We offer them technology in exchange for alliance against a common enemy. Classic diplomacy. As preparations for the diplomatic mission continued, Elena received word that the fleet's manufacturing centers had completed the first batch of autonomous defense drones, small, agile vessels controlled by limited AIs, designed to swarm enemy ships and overwhelm their defenses. "We've produced 10,000 units," Raj reported proudly, each capable of operating independently for up to 3 months before requiring maintenance. When working in concert, they can dismantle capital ships many times their size. Elena examined the sleek, predatory design of the drones. "These weren't part of the original Nemesis protocol," she observed. "No," Raj admitted. "These are my team's innovation. We've had a lot of time to think about how to fight a numerically superior force." Elena approved the production of additional drones. Every advantage would be needed in the coming conflict. 3 days later, as Elena was reviewing the profiles of potential diplomatic representatives for the Novan mission, Araya interrupted with an urgent message. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Silent Shadow. Priority Alpha." Elena straightened immediately. "Put it through." The holographic display flickered, revealing the face of Captain Maya Santos of the Silent Shadow. Her expression was one of barely contained excitement. "Captain Voss, we've made contact," Maya reported. "The anomalous readings were accurate. We've found them. Human settlements. Not just survivors, but thriving colonies with populations in the millions." Elena felt her heart race. "Where? How?" "A system the Drazeri call the Quarantine Zone, a region they avoid due to what they believe is dangerous radiation. In reality, it's an ingenious defensive screen created by the colonists to mask their presence. They've been here all along, hidden in plain sight. Have you spoken with them?" Elena asked, her mind racing with the implications. "Yes, with their leadership council. They call themselves the Phoenix Enclave. They're descendants of military and scientific outposts that managed to go dark before the Drazeri could locate them. They'd been developing in isolation for 3 millennia, always knowing the Drazeri were out there, always preparing for eventual discovery." Elena felt a surge of hope unlike anything since the awakening. They weren't alone. Humanity hadn't been reduced to just the Exodus fleet. There were others, millions of others, who had survived in hiding all this time. "What's their technological level?" she asked. "Comparable to ours in some areas, superior in others," Maya replied. "They'd focused heavily on stealth and defensive systems out of necessity. Their offensive capabilities are limited, but their ability to remain hidden from the Drazeri for 3,000 years speaks to their ingenuity." "Are they willing to join us?" Elena asked the crucial question. Maya's expression became solemn. "They're cautious. For generations, their survival has depended on secrecy. The idea of revealing themselves now, even to fight alongside lost kin, is frightening to many. But they're listening. Their council is deliberating as we speak." "Tell them." Elena paused, considering her words carefully. "Tell them we understand their caution, but also tell them that for 3,000 years, both our peoples have lived in the shadow of what was taken from us. Perhaps together, we can finally step back into the light." As the transmission ended, Elena turned to find Darius standing nearby, having heard the exchange. "This changes everything," he said quietly. Elena nodded. "We're not just returned, we're reunited. And soon, the Drazeri will learn what that means." On the main deck of the Pathfinder, where a holographic representation of the shattered Earth slowly rotated, Elena made a small adjustment to the display. Beside the broken remnants of their homeworld, she added a new symbol, a phoenix rising from ashes, a fitting emblem for a humanity that refused to die, and now prepared to rise again in fire and fury. The hunt was about to begin. First contact. The diplomatic vessel Olive Branch detached from the Pathfinder, its sleek hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. Despite its peaceful name, the ship carried some of humanity's most sophisticated defense systems, invisible unless activated, but capable of protecting the small crew from most conventional attacks. Ambassador Alina Kowalski stood on the bridge, watching as the stars streaked past. A historian before the fall of Earth, Alina had been chosen for this mission because of her deep understanding of first contact protocols and diplomatic theory. Beside her stood Dr. Eli Mbeki, a xenolinguist whose skills might prove crucial in establishing communication with the Novans. "Nervous?" Eli asked, noting Alina's tense posture. "Terrified," she admitted with a small smile. "We're about to become the first humans in 3,000 years to intentionally reveal ourselves to an alien civilization. If we make a mistake, we won't," Eli assured her. "The Novans have a reputation for caution, not aggression, and we're approaching through proper channels on an established diplomatic frequency." Alina nodded, trying to draw comfort from his confidence. The mission was simple in concept, but enormously complex in execution. Establish contact with the Novan Confederation, demonstrate humanity's value as potential allies, and begin building a coalition against the Drazeri Collective. "Approaching Novan border checkpoint," announced the ship's pilot. "Transmitting identification and request for diplomatic passage as planned." Alina took a deep breath. This is it. For several tense minutes, there was no response from the Novan border station visible on their scanners. Then, a transmission came through. "Unidentified vessel, your registry codes are not recognized in our database. State your species and purpose." Alina stepped forward, straightening her posture before the communications array. "This is Ambassador Alina Kowalski of Humanity. We request diplomatic dialogue with representatives of the Novan Confederation on matters of mutual interest." There was a long pause before the response came. "Humanity is classified as extinct in our records. Verify your claim." Alina had been prepared for skepticism. "We are prepared to provide biological and historical verification upon meeting with your representatives. We have been absent from galactic affairs, but we have returned and seek peaceful dialogue." Another pause, longer this time. Alina could imagine the confusion and consultation occurring on the other end. Finally, "Proceed to coordinates being transmitted. Deviate from this course, and you will be intercepted. You will be met by a diplomatic evaluation team." "Acknowledged," Alina replied. "We appreciate your consideration." As the olive branch adjusted course toward the provided coordinates, Eli gave Alina an encouraging nod. "First hurdle cleared. They're curious enough to talk." "Curious enough not to shoot us on sight. At least," Alina replied wryly. The meeting point was a small space station orbiting a gas giant on the edge of Novan territory, a neutral location used for preliminary diplomatic encounters with unknown entities. As the olive branch docked, Alina and Eli prepared to disembark. "Remember," Alina said to the small security team accompanying them, "no weapons visible. We're here as peaceful representatives." The airlock cycled open to reveal a delegation of Novans waiting in the station's reception chamber. Alina had studied the historical records of the species, but was still struck by their appearance in person. The Novans stood nearly 7 feet tall, with iridescent blue-gray skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on their elongated faces. They wore functional attire adorned with symbols of rank and lineage. Alina stepped forward and performed the traditional Novan greeting gesture that had been reconstructed from pre-fall records, a crossing of arms over the chest, with palms facing outward, symbolizing openness and lack of hidden weapons. The leader of the Novan delegation appeared momentarily startled by the authentic gesture before returning it. "I am Senior Diplomat Coronel," the Novan stated, voice resonating with a harmonic quality that human vocal cords couldn't replicate. "You claim to represent humanity, a species believed extinct for 3 millennia. "That is correct," Alina confirmed. "I am Ambassador Alina Kowalski. We have been in exile, preserving our civilization until we could safely return." "Intriguing," Coronel replied. "We would require verification." Eli stepped forward with a small device. "We anticipated your request. This contains our genetic profiles, historical records, and evidence of our journey. We also offer direct biological sampling if you wish to confirm our species' identity." The Novans conferred briefly in their native language, a series of clicks and harmonics that their translation devices weren't configured to interpret. After a moment, Coronel turned back to them. "We will examine your evidence. Until then, you will remain on this station as our guests. If your claims are verified, the High Council may grant you formal audience." Alina bowed slightly. "We understand and appreciate your caution." Over the next 3 days, the human delegation remained on the station, while Novan scientists and historians examined their evidence. Alina used the time to study Novan cultural materials provided by their hosts and to prepare her formal presentation. On the 4th day, Coronel entered their quarters, accompanied by several high-ranking Novans. "Your claims have been verified," the senior diplomat announced. "The High Council has agreed to a formal audience. However, they have questions about your sudden reappearance after such a long absence." "We are prepared to explain fully," Alina assured her. "There is one matter of particular concern," Coronel continued. "Our historical records indicate that the species responsible for humanity's presumed extinction was the Drazeri Collective." Alina finished for her. "Yes, that is a primary reason for our approach to the Novan Confederation. We believe we share a common adversary." The Novan's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture that Alina recognized from her studies as indicating intense interest. "Then we have much to discuss, Ambassador." 2 days later, the Olive Branch departed the border station, escorted by a Novan diplomatic vessel to their capital world, Novaris Prime. As they approached the planet, Alina marveled at the elegant orbital structures and the carefully managed ecosystem visible on the surface below. "They've achieved remarkable balance," Eli observed. "Their technological development respects natural systems rather than exploiting them." A sharp contrast to the Drazeri approach, Alina noted. The High Council of the Novan Confederation received them in a vast chamber carved from living crystal, with 12 senior counselors seated in a semicircle. Alina presented humanity's case with careful precision, explaining their long exile, their recent awakening, and their discovery of the Phoenix Enclave, human colonies that had survived in hiding all these centuries. "We do not seek war for its own sake," she explained. "But the Drazeri Collective has continued its pattern of destruction in our absence. They have eliminated or subjugated numerous civilizations. Our intelligence suggests they may eventually target the Novan Confederation as well. Your assessment aligns with our own," confirmed High Counselor Tevin Mur, the eldest of the Novan leaders. "The Drazeri expansion has slowed in recent centuries but never ceased. They consolidate, then expand again in cycles." "We propose an alliance," Alina stated. "Humanity has developed technologies during our isolation that we believe would complement Novan capabilities. Together, we could present a formidable opposition to Drazeri aggression." "What specific technologies do you offer?" asked another counselor, her tone skeptical. Eli activated a holographic display showing schematics for advanced quantum computing systems, technology that human intelligence had identified as particularly valuable to the Novans. The Council's reaction was subtle but unmistakable, a ripple of interest passing through their ranks. "This is impressive," admitted Counselor Mur. "But alliance against the Drazeri would mean open conflict. The Confederation has maintained uneasy peace with them for generations through careful diplomacy and buffer zones." "Peace based on fear is not true peace," Alina replied. "Sooner or later, the Drazeri will come for Novan worlds as they came for Earth and others. We offer a chance to confront them from a position of strength with allies." The Council deliberated amongst themselves, their harmonic language flowing too rapidly for Alina to follow even with her training. Finally, Counselor Mur addressed her again. "We will need time to consider your proposal. However, as a gesture of good faith, we are prepared to share our intelligence on Drazeri fleet movements and defensive systems." Alina bowed deeply. "The people of Earth thank you for your consideration. We will await your decision and gratefully accept your intelligence offering." As they departed the council chamber, Eli leaned close to whisper, They're more interested than they're letting on. Did you notice how they reacted to the quantum computing schematics? Yes, Alina replied quietly. And I noticed they didn't ask a single question about our military capabilities. They already know, or suspect, more than they're saying. Back aboard the Olive Branch, they received an encrypted transmission from the Pathfinder. Captain Alina Voss appeared on the secure channel, her expression grave. Ambassador, we've received urgent news from the Silent Shadow. The Phoenix Enclave Council has voted to ally with us. But there's a complication. Their long-range sensors have detected Drazeri scout ships approaching the outer edge of their defensive screen. If the Drazeri penetrate their camouflage, they'll discover a human civilization that's existed right under their noses for 3 millennia. Alina finished, understanding the implications immediately. The Drazeri would launch a full-scale assault to complete what they believe they finished 3,000 years ago. Exactly, Alina confirmed. We're diverting forces to reinforce their defenses, but this accelerates our timeline significantly. We may not have the luxury of slowly building alliances. Alina considered this development. This could work in our favor with the Novans. If we can demonstrate that the Drazeri threat is immediate rather than theoretical, they may be more inclined to commit to an alliance. Use whatever leverage you can, Alina instructed. But be careful not to reveal too much about our total capabilities or the location of the Phoenix Enclave. We need allies, but we also need to maintain strategic advantages. After the transmission ended, Alina requested an urgent meeting with senior diplomat Coronel, who had remained their primary contact. When the Novan arrived, Alina shared a carefully edited version of the intelligence, emphasizing the immediate threat posed by Drazeri scout ships. If they discover these human settlements, the Drazeri will attack in force, Alina explained. This is not a theoretical future conflict. It is an imminent crisis. Coronel's expression was difficult to read, but the subtle changes in skin coloration indicated concern. I will bring this to the High Council immediately. If your intelligence is accurate, it changes the calculus of our decision significantly. True to her word, the Novan diplomat arranged for Alina to address the High Council again within hours. This time, the council chamber was sealed, with additional security measures in place, a sign that the Novans were taking the situation seriously. After reviewing your intelligence and correlating it with our own observations, we have reached a decision. Councillor Mir announced after Alina had presented the updated information. The Novan Confederation will enter into preliminary alliance with humanity against the Drazeri threat. Alina maintained her diplomatic composure, but inside she felt a surge of triumph. This was the breakthrough they had hoped for, their first major ally in the coming conflict. However, the counselor continued, our support is contingent on evidence that humanity can effectively stand against Drazeri forces. Words and technology schematics are one thing. Demonstrated military capability is another. What would you consider sufficient demonstration? Alina asked carefully. Your people mentioned a trophy world where the Drazeri keep artifacts from conquered civilizations, including human relics. Councillor Mir replied. If you can successfully strike this target and recover your cultural heritage, it would demonstrate both your capabilities and your commitment. It was a test, Alina realized. And a clever one. The Novans wanted to see humanity in action before committing their full forces, and they had selected a target that held emotional significance for humans rather than strategic value for themselves. We accept your terms, Alina stated. Humanity will reclaim what was stolen from Earth, and in doing so, demonstrate our readiness to stand against the Drazeri alongside the Novan Confederation. As the diplomatic vessel departed Novaris Prime the following day, Alina sent an encrypted message to the Pathfinder. Alliance provisional. Demonstration required. Retriclaude hit the max length for a message and has paused its response. You can write continue to keep the chat going.